All right, welcome to Popular Liberty. It is, April 8th in the year 2022 of our Lord Jesus Christ, and we are here to talk about the post-libertarian moment, defining it, what it is, why it happened, what it isn't, what it means. This is an essay written by, LB Muniz about yours truly. No, I'm just kidding. and but it's talking about like why has this happened in the past year? It starts off really well. I like how you started it with what is the libertarian moment.
Mm-hmm.
What we had in the past with Ron Paul, and why is this time different? Why is it that when we had a libertarian moment, we got libertarianism out of it, but why is it this time around post-libertarianism is just not a thing? Post-libertarians are not really a thing. This is just a moment, not a movement. And I think you do a really, really good job at explaining why, because this is a very nuanced topic, and I like how you start off with the history of this.
Yeah, and I think, well, I think, and I think that nuance gets lost in a lot of these conversations, and there's just an element of what I've just come to basically accept is that there's just an element of of language, but specifically political rhetoric is just going to be a part of it. So at least the record is here for what we're actually talking about when we're trying to get at a more nuanced take of what's going on. I think after we published this back in November of 2021, and I think the biggest thing, what I'd say before we get into it, and this is what I said on my show, is this really has to do with the fact that there's a few different places you can start this whole libertarian movement question. Certainly, the idea of liberty is much older than the modern American libertarian movement, but that was a movement that I found that I have been a part of for basically my adult life. And I think the only reason why this moment happened within like a subset of the community that of the certain podcasts and streamers and writers and institutes that you pay attention to, right? Like that in this little corner of what is a broader movement of people, kind of we're all looking into it just to say, hey, maybe we need to get involved in politics somehow. Whereas before, it really wasn't a part of the identity of the culture and the movement, right? Political involvement per se. Sure, there were people out there doing it, but it wasn't. It wasn't the focus. And I think as more people accepted that maybe there needs to be a focus on real world political change, I think that's where we see the moment and the divide that actually occurs. And so we'll obviously get into that, but that would be like at the outset, I think that's really what we're talking about is what's the right kind of strategy and tactic to take to accomplish what I think we all agree is the overall mission, which would be more human freedom and flourishing. That's what started me on the path of intellectual journey that that has basically led here. And what has been very surprising is how much well, and I started out, even frankly, just to make the point, is I started out more in opposition anyway. Like you said, like this is like about you, like not just you, but there was a few people saying things that I thought made some sense, but other parts didn't. And so like I engaged with you guys and like tried to learn more. So some of this is chronicling even just based off that of saying, all right, what is it that you guys were talking about? And in some instances, they were things that I had like thought weren't important anymore. And or had like been like, yeah, this doesn't really matter. But there are moments in history where you have to make sure you question your assumptions about the world. So and that's kind of where I tried to start the piece, right in the introduction, is say, put it very clearly of what we're talking about. This is the post 2020 world, the post lockdown world. It's a very different world than existed in 2018.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I think that's a good place to start reading, and the I think you should go ahead and do the reading on this. This is your piece.
So just starting with the introduction.
Yeah.
All right. So with the introduction, this is very much in my mind, this is like movie. This is kind of like movie over voice with this. So it's like,
Do it.
there's been a stirring across the country Over the last 18 months and counting, we have witnessed the nightmare of tyrannical government come to fruition. Not only have many liberal Western democracies removed the last pretense of civil rights for their subjects, but our friends, family, neighbors, and fellow libertarians have cheered the lockdowns. Even worse, they turn their anger not at the government agents and media personalities making prisoners of us all, but at those of us who would question a political narrative with holes so big you could pilot a container ship through it with your eyes closed. In the summer of 2020, libertarians witnessed civil unrest not seen in over 20 years. Cities burned, businesses lost millions in revenue, people lost their lives, and tyrants in charge did nothing to stem the rioting. Infamously, outlets like CNN insisted upon a narrative that what was occurring across the country was, quote, mostly peaceful. All of this amidst the most contentious and orchestrated presidential campaign in modern history. There are certain moments of history that will be spoken of for years to come. Certainly, the case can be made that the 2020s will be such a time. Given this fact, the question remains, what are libertarians to do? This essay will define the post-libertarian moment, detailing what it is, why it happened, what it isn't, and what it means. But first, an abridged history. And
yeah, the libertarian moment's the next one.
Yeah. The year is 2008. America is on the cusp of inaugurating Barack Hussein Obama as the 44th president of the United States. On the pages of Reason magazine's December issue, editors Nick Gillespie and Matt Welsh encapsulate the libertarian moment. This is now a world where it's more possible than ever to live your life on your own terms. It's an early rough draft version of the libertarian philosopher Robert Nozick's glimmering utopia of utopias. Due to exponential advances in technology, broad-based increases in wealth, the ongoing networking of the world via trade and culture, and the decline of both state and private institutions of repression, never before has it been easier for more individuals to chart their own course and steer their lives by the stars as they see the sky. If you don't believe it, ask your gay friends, or simply look who's running for the White House in 2008. They go on to say the libertarian moment is based on, quote, a few hard-won insights. These include markets are the best way to organize an economy, vaguely representative democracy is the least worst form of government, the end of colonialism and communism, and the internet. They wrote this after Dr. Ron Paul's first run for president and the beginning of what would come to be known as the modern liberty movement. Anything you wanted to say in before we keep going?
No, I think you're about to get some comments from me from the next one.
Okay. Yeah, so these are, and just stylistically, these are like flashpoints of different historical things before we get into the meat, the theoretical meat, I should say.
Here's the meat.
This is the appetizer. This is the very delicious appetizer you weren't expecting.
Oh yeah.
So second visage, if you will. Heading into the 2016 election, libertarians weren't alone as a people. There were college groups like Young Americans for Liberty and Students for Liberty, an outgrowth of the Ron Paul presidential runs, organizing activists across the country and spreading the message, as many are fond of saying. Dr. Rand Paul, Ron's son, was seen as a probable contender for president, ready to give Jeb Bush, please clap, a run for his money in the Republican primary. That is, until Trump. Donald Trump remains an anomaly in American politics, and his chaotic entrance and campaign shocked many Americans, especially the elite media, to their core. He did what no other Republican would dare: counterpunch the media and the left. Lest we forget, presidential loser Hillary Clinton colluded with the press to elevate Trump's profile. As the WikiLeaks demonstrates, the Pied Piper strategy was designed to, quote, use the field as a whole to inflict damage on itself, similar to what happened to Mitt Romney in 2012. The variety of candidates is a positive here, and this is quoting from an email in the WikiLeaks dump. The variety of candidates is a positive here, and many of the lesser known can serve as a cudgel to move the more established candidates further to the right. In this scenario, we don't want to marginalize the more extreme candidates, but make them more Pied Piper candidates who actually represent the mainstream of the Republican Party. Pied Piper
I want to
candidates.
stop right here because I find it. I always found it very fascinating that not only did like the right, the Republican Party completely misread the cycle, but the left did too. And I didn't expect that from them. They seem to have a much better understanding of where they are in society historically. I mean, if you look at Lenin, a guy like that, he completely understood where he was in the cycle. Like a guy like Mao completely understood where he was in the cycle, that this is revolution time. And
right.
Our left, our media completely misread the cycle. Like they thought they were about to, achieve the promised land. But what they ended up doing was they said, okay, this is not going to be a Republican cycle or whatever, and we just need to let get the most radical, the most crazy guy, right wing guy in there. And when this is a right wing cycle and the right really is like they're ready to win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the turning point had been reached, and and they completely misread it, and they played into the cycle when they should have been playing away from it. And when I am taking this to the libertarian moment, Rand Paul did the same exact thing, and like his father would never have missed this. This is a right wing time, and your thing needs to be like you're heading into this thing needs to be you're going far to the right. I mean, you need to outright the right, hardcore, and Rand didn't do that. And I think that was one of the main reasons why he lost, was that and that he just like fell so flat, but he was not like outwriting anybody. And only at the point where he was just like writing himself off the stage. You know what I mean?
And he kind of invariably, and because he is frankly, because he's a polite guy, we've all learned a new style of political communications post-Trump. Like I myself was very much one of those people, and still am to a certain extent. Like I hand wring a little bit about language sometimes, a lot of times actually, right? Like I've gotten better at the counterpunching, but trying to say, making sure you're saying the right thing and not saying anything too provocative. I think before 2016 was still largely anathema on the right. This is why I say Donald Trump is an anomaly. And I think there's something to that. You point out these other men of history, good or for ill, right? These great, not great in the sense that they had a large impact on cultures and people. And what you see is, you said, people who understood what their role was. And whereas I see Trump as far more of an opportunist. And
see that there it is. Because he's an opportunist. He understood what the opportunity was.
Well, it was literally doing everything that that your basic Republican wants you to do every single time, which is stand up to the media, stand up to not like say like I had not binders full of women, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's like, oh wait, it really is that thing of, oh wait, we can say something else.
I know.
But
it's funny because the opportunist understood where the cycle was. He didn't understand where it was going, and we all kind of assumed he did.
Well,
but
yeah, and I think I don't know. That's where I would still. I mean, I respect why people voted for Trump, but I was never on the Trump train. Now 2024 might be a different story on that, but that is just a far different. But that's because of how much my perspective has shifted on where we are in like political cycles. But to the point of, that's why I write as Donald Trump is an anomaly. And I think, because he was part of the chosen class. He was part of the donor class. I think the mistake, I think what you've seen and this is what clicked when you were talking, is what you've seen in this soft cultural revolution we've basically had since 2016 is what they realized is some of these celebrities who've gotten really rich off of this system that a certain group of people have created, right? Like a certain crop of elites who have certain political predilections and all that. What they've started to do, if you haven't noticed, is weed out the people who won't toe the line, right? Yeah. Dave Chappelle, Joe Rogan, Donald Trump. What are the things that these guys have in common is they have talent, right? They're hard workers of a kind. They know how to market themselves really, really well. And that, that made them useful to the system, but they never wanted to be a part of the system, versus like a Will Smith, right?
Yeah, or Jon Stewart.
Or
Like,
Jon Stewart. Great. Yeah. And to the point of, yeah, like Jon Stewart could be doing his own thing right now on Patreon, right? Instead, he has an overproduced podcast where apparently he's doing a lot of white apologizing. I don't know. It's something. It's very it's very Svet, right? It occurred to me today that like, oh, I just realized that like for middle class white women, it would be, like caring about the plight of the minority is no different than like, the Africa, like the going to Africa and helping people, but really just doing a photo op. It's
and it's interesting to me too that I could.
Sorry, that was a non sequitur.
Yeah, I was like pretty full into the libertarian movement, back in 2016, and it's like
yeah, me too.
I was new into it, but I was like die hard new, and and I remember how I would look at the election, how I was looking at the cycle, and how everybody else seemed to be completely out of step with it. They're just like, he can't, Trump can't win, and this is going to be, they're just as bad, we're neither left or right, and all that old stuff, and like that got old, within 6 months for me. Like 6 months into the movement, I was completely done with that kind of line of thinking, because I could see this is not where the cycle is right now, and and I could easily see Trump winning and beating Hillary. I could easily see the like what would happen with the left and how they would just go absolutely bonkers when he did, and that it seemed to be such a surprise to everybody else. Not only took me by surprise, but I think it foreshadowed what was to come. Like 4 years later, it really, there was a ton of foreshadowing in 2016 for what happened in 2020. With the post-libertarian movement, where the libertarian movement was in 2016 did not change from 2016 to 2020, and that was like that was one of the things that told me there's a problem here. It's like, because I can remember in like early 2018, I really started to think to myself, there's something really wrong here. How are these people not seeing this? How are they not getting this? Are they so far out of step with where I am and where reality has clearly been going this entire time? And it started like 2018 was when the post-libertarian moments really started to dawn on me, because at that point we had seen Robert Mueller, we had seen like Russiagate, and we had seen basically them the deep state attempting a coup of the president.
Well, and let's and let's be frank. The crux of this really is that some people got it into their heads that going to the libertarian that taking over the Libertarian Party is an effective vehicle for political change in America.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's really the thing that we're dancing around, and so what I hear you saying is like you came to the very obvious conclusion that everyone had already come to already, which is third party politics are nearly impossible to do in America.
Oh, not just that, but like, I had internalized, most of the, ANCAP doctrine by, late 2016, early 2017. And so the idea that democracy is mostly bullshit and we live in an oligarchy is just like, duh, to me. And so, when I start to see, like other people like in 2017 start up the Libertarian Mises Caucus, and I see other stuff about, that they're saying, which is just completely out of step of where we are and what we even say we believe. Like if you're an ANCAP, you are supposed to believe democracy is bullshit. And you're supposed to believe that the corporate press is actually in charge of the state, not the actual state. And, I mean, a lot of the stuff that, Curtis Yarvin says, this was like, not like it wasn't attributed to him back then. I never heard of him until like 2020, but these ideas.
I was gonna say, when did Malice put out the new right though? Was that
2018? I think.
Yeah, so that would have been the first. I mean, the Malice was the first introduction I had to Yarvin.
Yeah. Like I had that. I read that book or listened to the audiobook really in its entirety right then. But back then, it just like I mean, I had no idea who he was really until 2020. I just heard his name and I'm like, Monarchy, pie, and I'm an
Yeah,
ANCAP.
same.
I believe in anarchy, and I just completely dismissed it. And because I didn't understand he was talking about corporate. It was ironic because around the late 2017 was when I invented the anti-tax, and that was when I came to the idea that what we really need is a corporate style of government. Like that was how I got there. Was I invented the anti-tax, and I realized that the mechanism, that government mechanism, I would need to control it properly would be something like an anarcho covenant or a corporate monarchy. But I didn't call it a monarchy back then, and that was how I got to corporate monarchy. And but I could see just back then these people are not practicing what they preach, and I was like, it was a head scratcher for me. I didn't quite understand like this nuance of the libertarian movement. That
I
there are
think
people,
I think you bring up a good point of like the ANCAP who will choose to who will like non-ironically participate in
yeah,
democracy. Because now I was never an anarchist. I never claimed the label anarchist, so I was never an ANCAP.
yeah,
I've always, libertarian was enough for me. Anarchism, minarchism never made any sense because who the fuck cares? We're nowhere
it's so
close
far
to it.
away. Yeah,
Which
but
I think kind of, I guess maybe just put me in a unique position where it was like, oh, okay, we're having this part. I guess we're kind of having this part of the conversation now. Um,
that
yeah, I mean, I was on the
conversation,
other side. I was definitely the person who I had to see it for myself. Like I had seen the
yeah,
criticisms
it
but at
was the
this, go
for
ahead.
me, it was the LPMC,
Hmm.
discussion in like late 2017, early 2018, juxtaposed to the Mueller Gate and Russia Gate, and juxtaposed to that, I was like, and you say at the same exact time, you don't believe in democracy, you believe this is bullshit, and you're seeing in real time how like the president does not control
Sure.
the executive branch, and how this thing really has a mind of its own. Ditto the press,
And
and
I
like,
think
how
what's
could you
interesting is
possibly?
I think a lot of people see that it's really just like I said. I think
They
the
don't connect
crux
the
at the end of
dots.
the day is this is really just an argument against LP politics, and like you could make it like. Thankfully, there's more there, right? But that's the part that it's really coming down to. It's not a matter of not engaging in politics or like not engaging in voting. It's just kind of saying, well, I'll eventually get to that point, but um I don't know. It's
Go ahead and finish where we are, but I think we're about to continue this on the
yeah,
next
and yeah, and
page.
like how I actually introduced the LPMC, I think is worthwhile
Yeah.
because we'll kind of see it. But you just traced it. Blah, blah, blah. So we were talking about the Pied Piper strategy, and again, I just really want to hit the point that because it like is that the media elevated Trump to begin with. So
For the sure
yes,
thing.
there was just a lot of pieces there that nobody, to your point, nobody at the top levels of most of the press institutions were seeing, right? Or like certain patterns or trends within the demographics as
And how
well.
interesting that is compared to what they did with Ron Paul, which was like they shut him out entirely.
Well, correct, and I think that goes back to the point of they kind of thought they could use Trump because he's kind of a clown, right? But he's
Hmm.
also he's also a Hillary Clinton donor, right? So he can't be that bad, even though he's the big bad Republican now, and that's where I think
Yeah.
you see Trump as the, again, not as the usurper, but as the opportunist, right? He's like, you guys want me to
Yeah.
do this? You want okay? You want me to say it this way? Okay, and then I get to be president at the end of this. I don't know.
You
You put
like
those
to
three. You
build the
you put those
wall and
decisions
deport
in
the
front of me. I'm
Muzzies?
going to say yes.
It's
You
like, you
know.
want me to bash the media, bash the Mexicans, bash the Muzzies,
Yeah, you
and
want me to
it's like,
say
all
whatever
right, I can do
yeah,
that.
you want me to say whatever I want, and
Like
like, yeah,
all of the other, yeah, I like the way Dave Smith puts it, where he's like, oh yeah, Trump was the guy that all of the other Republicans, there's like pocket aces on the ground, and no one wanted to play them, and Trump's just like, yeah, I'll do it, and he just picks them up and plays the pocket aces.
and this is like where Scott Adams had made the point of the longer Trump is out of office and out of the public eye, the better for him, because you just start to be like, yeah, it really wasn't that bad for the
Yeah.
normal person, right? Because basically your opinion of Trump at this point is like, yeah, he really wasn't that bad, or he's still the devil, right? Or I love him, but like, I think
It's
even a
like,
lot of
yeah, he was clearly cheated, but anyway,
yeah, and a lot of the people who love him though don't love him as much now. So anyway, we'll get
yeah,
into that.
go ahead. Use the
So
field
the
as
2020, so Pied Piper strategy. In this scenario, we don't want to marginalize the more extreme candidates, but make them more Pied Piper candidates who actually represent the mainstream of the Republican Party. The Pied Piper candidates who actually represent the mainstream, including but aren't limited to Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Ben Carson. If you can remember that, Ben Carson was running for president in 2016. We need to be elevating the Pied Piper candidates so that they are leaders of the pack and tell the press to take them seriously. Suffice to say, Trump's elevation and charisma meant the libertarian moment of 2016 never happened. The 2020 lockdowns. I can still remember sitting at my desk trying to work. Really, like everyone else, I was waiting for the governor of my state to decree whether people would show up to work on Monday. It was then I learned my work was deemed essential. Lest we forget, what began as 15 days to slow the spread has lasted over 600. Millions will go to their grave believing that mass lockdowns and disruptions to everyday life was warranted by the novel coronavirus. Those of us sensitive to government overreach found a new resistance when we disagreed with government mandates. Now, disagreement online wasn't perceived as just a nuisance of Facebook, but a threat to the very survival of humanity. Of course, the media narratives surrounding issues like climate change, microaggressions, and so on had cleared a path to this moment. Speaking out against growing government tyranny in the age of COVID has shown the path of tolerance for left-wing progressives is the road to hell paved with so-called good intentions. Where microaggressions could be considered hyperbolic, not wearing a mask means you're trying to kill someone. That's what the TV told people, and millions bought in.
And this was this part I remember was particularly because in 2019, it's like I had at least 3 out of the 4, or I should say 3 out of the 6 laws of archotropism. So it was very clear to me what was coming. Back in 2019, like I could see that they're clearly setting up for some sort of crisis in order to get Donald Trump out. This is how they power grab and get him out. They need to cause a crisis. And I figured it was going to be a banking crisis spurred by China. And, because their real estate markets and their banking system were just like, so they were just ready to collapse. Ditto, especially with what they were doing in Hong Kong, which was going to absolutely torpedo their economy, and did. And so I had been watching China like a hawk, and then I saw the COVID start to come, and I'm like, oh shit, here it is. This is far worse than I imagined. And I could see the videos. I could see like, if this is getting out there, like China doesn't just let these things get out. It's like this is clearly planned. This is clearly orchestrated. And I could see like when China started doing their lockdowns, because I was just thinking like, this is a highly contagious virus. What are they going to do? Lock everyone down? Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And then it hit me like within a day that, this is what everyone else is going to do. Everyone else is going to go and copy this. Holy fuck, this is bad. And I went into full panic mode, and like I bought a gun. I bought like early January.
Yep.
I bought a rifle. I went and bought a whole lot of spare food. And I sold all of my investments at the top of the market and prepared to make and I started looking real hard to buy a house because I knew that was going to be a great investment. And the Fed's going to slam interest rates down to 0. 2 weeks later, the mortgage rates will hit rock bottom. I'm going to buy it right then at the bottom of the market, and everything's going to go up from there because as people have 0% mortgage rates again, that's what's going to happen to the price. Not to mention all the inflation is going to come. They're going to print like crazy for when this lockdown happens. Everything was so clear. And I started like, at this, I didn't like, wait. I started telling everybody, like in the part of the prominent circle, like, oh my God, this is bad. Guys, we need to panic right now. This is like panic time right now. Yeah. And, and I was just like, oh my God, this guy's like Chicken Little. Like that. And I'm like, no. Look at what the left is about to do. The left is evil. They're the bogey. Look at them. That's the enemy. And even like 6 months into the lockdowns, people were just like, we're neither left nor right. So there were some Republican states that were shutting down too. And I'm just like beside myself. But with the even like the part of the Parliamentary Circle libertarians who are like the based of based. These
Right,
are
right,
the
right.
best of the best,
Yeah.
and it was just I was just beside myself. Like how are they missing this? How do they not see what's coming? And how do they not see what's happening? That this is all clearly deliberate, and that this is been planned out. This has been, and the left is like clearly taking advantage of this for political reasons, so they can get Trump out, and they're not going to stop there
During an election year.
Yeah, I was just like, how do you not see it?
I think that's really interesting, because I was in a position of, I had kind of taken a step back from, like, I was still working out some like philosophical stuff, but like, as far as paying really close attention to the news cycle, I kind of just become more of a passive consumer, as I like, because I got like the job that I have currently. So I was really, I was like, I could keep doing the podcasting, writing thing, or I can focus on what's making me money. I chose to focus on what's making me money. Was a very good choice to make. And I was kind of even in a position where I wasn't really thinking about writing, writing in any like in any capacity for like a public audience, or coming back to podcasting or something like that. And then it was the lockdowns that basically spurred me into action, and part of that came from being in arguments with not even arguments, but trying to have a conversation with family, and seeing the degree to which people were not perceiving the obvious, like you were pointing out, the obvious manipulation that was at play. Again, to the point of, I like to take the position that a lot of times, like, nefarious origins or not, you can still follow the trend, right?
Yeah.
You can follow the trend patterns, where like you don't actually have to know the origin point to plot the course of something. It just makes it a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're following it along, then all the more so. It doesn't really matter. But to your point, I was, and that's why I brought my voice in. But even in that moment, I still had that thing of like, again, there's a podcast that I did right before the election or right after the election of 2020, where it's like, well, the Libertarian Party bears my name, so let's finish this last paragraph, and that'll lead us very into the LPMC. And yeah, so, and again, like, to the point is, people, you can go and hear me say stuff very positive about the LPMC, because, as I said, Dave Smith said join, and so I did.
Yeah.
Whether they are correct, the people who thought that lockdowns were worth it, or whether they are participants in a mass delusion, is not my point. These are the times we find ourselves in. Libertarians find themselves in. The libertarian movement that began with a few academics in the 1960s had expanded into a popular movement in 2008, with the third largest political party in the, quote, freest country on earth bearing its name. Yet in 2020, libertarians could do nothing to stop the government from going tyrannical. The LPMC. You may think it's worthwhile to trace the history of the Libertarian Party back 50 years, but the popular or modern libertarian movement was not concerned with the Libertarian Party until the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, or LPMC, began to recruit members into the political party after the failed Johnson-Weld ticket of 2016. In episode 1010 of the Tom Woods Show in 2017, LPMC chairman Michael Heiss, when asked about the strategy of the LPMC, said, quote, "Our first call to action that we're doing to rally people is to vote for new leadership. There are people in leadership who are more of the Bill Weld ilk, or who don't represent the message in a way variety that we like or we are used to. So we want to make it more Ron Paul and less Bill Weld." Of course, he's talking about the Libertarian Party. The LPMC has been highly successful in recruiting libertarians to their cause, including many high-profile figures like Tom Woods, Scott Horton, and Dave Smith. The takeover, as it is now being called, is well underway, and the caucus expects to take control of the Libertarian National Committee at the National Convention in May of 2022. The caucus has succeeded in taking over the leadership of many state affiliates, prior to the National Convention. Before 2020, political action was largely an academic question for libertarians, which is to say that it didn't have consequence or meaning, right? It was an academic question you could ask. In the shadow cast by lockdowns, political action has far more dramatic consequences. The LPMC gave libertarians looking to, quote, do something, a place to go and do it, and a community of like-minded individuals to network with. What is often lost in the criticisms of the LPMC is the recognition that they have become an authority on what political action should look like for libertarians. Whether they have the right prescription is a different matter entirely, worthy of its own investigation. The LPMC has been operating for over 4 years in an effort to take over the Libertarian Party. The standing guard within the Libertarian Party has not welcomed the influx of new activists. In fact, various factions within the LP work explicitly against the LPMC, creating a culture war within a party that eschews culture wars. Put another way, there are good, hardworking libertarians who are spending hours of their week and hundreds of their dollars joining a political party that is explicitly rejecting them. The explicit plan is to take over the LNC and then the boards for each of the state affiliates. This will ensure a real libertarian runs for president in 2024, though everyone understands a libertarian on the LP ticket will not win the 2024 election. When the LPMC is successful in taking over the Libertarian Party, they will still face the uphill battle that all third parties do in the United States of America. This will make it that much harder for good libertarian candidates to be elected to positions they could win, either without a political party or with the GOP.
And like starting with the DLPMC, like when this thing was starting, 4 years ago, I was kind of sitting there thinking like, okay, one, what you're saying doesn't quite line up with what you're saying you believe, like that, hey, this democracy thing is bullshit, and you're just saying, hey, we need more libertarians for the sake of needing more libertarians. It's like this is not a plan. Okay, you have like, I mean, it really was that meme, step 1, read Rothbard, step 2, question mark, step 3, Ancapistan. And this was like the definition of it. And what they started to do, I remember the first time I heard Michael Heiss, talking on Dave Smith's program. And I thought, actually, this guy sounds really reasonable, because what the thing that really sold me on initially joining, because I did initially join, was that he was saying that, hey, we're going to stop running all of these, like third-party spoiler candidates, because I was sitting there thinking to myself, yes, thank you,
Precisely.
because all you're doing with these spoiler candidates is associating our good name with losing. It's like libertarian means to come in third. It's like, and third wins nothing. Second place wins nothing. And and it's like you are associating our reputation with failure, and you're doing legal damage to the reputation of libertarians. So obviously putting a stop to this practice made tons of sense. It was obviously a sensible idea, and that, like, if nothing else, just repairing our reputation, was like enough to like sell me on the Republican, on the LPMC. I joined. I started donating $10 a month and stuff like that, and then in the middle of it, it changed. And they're like, oh, yeah, actually, we're going to continue with all the spoiler stuff. Yeah, we're going to continue with, all of the, the national campaigns and stuff. And like 2020 2021 came around, and they started like, oh, yeah, actually, we're going to run Dave for national. And I was like, this is not at all what you were talking about. And, another thing he had been talking about was like local politics. So like, and they spent virtually no money on it. As like, of all the money they raised, they only spent like a few thousand on like local politics. I'm like, this is the obvious place. Like, okay, and I made this point to Dave Smith when I, debated him. It's like, it wasn't sold to me as a debate. I walked in thinking this was going to be like a discussion.
Yeah, I thought it was a conversation, a contentious one at times, but
well, he came in expecting a debate, and it was clear to me in the first 20 minutes, like, oh, he thought this was going to be a debate, and he's clearly acting this way. But anyway, I started like firing back at him, like, what would you prefer? Would you prefer 1 million new libertarians or 10,000 libertarian mayors? And because I mean, the question is obvious. Do you want to have real power that affects people's lives, or do you want to just convert libertarians for the sake of converting libertarians? Because that was clearly what the LPMC is now about, is we're just converting them for the sake of converting them. We're not planning on using this power at all, and which is so clearly what the cycle calls for right now. That like the circumstances we're in demand that we take power. And this is why I ended up like, when I realized that they had no intention of this, because this is what I got kicked out of the LPMC for, was that I started like saying, well, okay, we're going to take over the Libertarian Party for messaging. And, I mean, obviously we should use it as a platform for, gaining power within the Republican Party. Like this thing could be weaponized. It's to me, it's still not inconceivable that you could use the LP itself as a real weapon for taking over the Republican Party and starting to like get real power in local governments. Right. And making a difference that way. And like to me, that that was just a no-brainer, and that got me kicked out. And I realized that this is not at all what they were selling. This is a like almost like a cult. They're not interested in it.
Let's maybe, just because cult is the disparaging word. Okay. It is a community, and I say this
community.
Is what?
Religious community. And
I mean, like, it is a community of people, of like-minded people, and but ironically that also is kind of that's also the Achilles heel, if you will. Ultimately, is what was the critique? And this was something for me that I kind of noticed. And it's like you notice it, and it's like, for me, it's just like, okay, so like maybe this LP politics thing isn't that big of a deal. Doesn't take any food off my plate. You know what I mean? I don't make any more or less money based off how well the Libertarian Party is doing. But I noticed that of like one of the attacks levied at the Libertarian Party was that it was a social club and not a political party. And I noticed invariably just the social the social element was the part I enjoyed more than the quote unquote party politicking. And I don't think I'm the only person who is or was inside the LPMC who feels the same way, right? It's like a group of people you can talk to and not feel sane. And that's why I said, like, like some of this, I think that's lost in the criticisms, where there are people out there and a lot of them are, successful or put together and, just kind of like living their life and want things to get a little bit better if they can, right? Like and like the LPMC, for better or worse, was the place that a lot of people went. I think ultimately, though, there's a, I don't know. I think I'm talking more about the people inside of it too, right? Because like I joined up in January of 2021, so it was very much after 2020 election. All right, here's the big push. The LNC is a year away. This is what we're gonna do. Blah 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 blah. So like, and here in Illinois, I still talk to a lot of the guys who are a part of it, even though I'm not like an active member or like, and have any sort of official affiliation. I'll still talk to them because we have like some outside, outside of official LPMC groups and stuff. So it is just kind of more of a community of people you can like talk to and share memes with. And I don't think that's a problem. I only think that's a problem when you pretend that's a political party.
Yeah. And like, I think you're making the same point I am, that I realized like at probably really late 2020, early 2021, like these people are not serious about really wanting to make change. And like, at this point, we had just lived through the year of 2020. Like that was over and done with.
And sorry, one more point. And that, but also for me too, it was like the second or third scandal where like a takeover of an LP would like turned into some kind of a thing. And that's where I was just like, why? Okay, if this is really how hard it's going to be, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. It does the institution doesn't even have ballot access for the presidential campaign you're getting everybody to join up for. Like, so it's
and for like this thing is, like everything you're saying you're wanting to do now, one, is completely different than what you sold me on. And like two, like all the stuff you're like, particularly in the context of the election just got stolen in plain sight. Like this was people forget, how obvious it was at the time. This election is being stolen. It's like all the mail-in ballot shenanigans, all of the irregularities, all of the witnesses, everyone who came forward is like, yeah, this is all bullshit. This election clearly got stolen.
Or even, I mean, just the amount of it. It's not even. See, and this is again, this is more my skeptical like approach, because what can we prove, what can we not prove, which is to say, like, just the level of narrative building, narrative crafting around what you could and couldn't say, right?
Well,
and you had basically, because I think you would agree that like irregularities always exist in elections, and like you and I both weren't under any delusions that there wasn't fraud going on in like small and bigger ways throughout past presidential elections as well. I would assume, right? But I think to your point, the ostentatiousness, the degree to which it was done and you couldn't talk about it was like, the audacity. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, audacity. Yeah. But for me, it was that, okay, you're wanting to reach out to the LP right now, which is a haven of leftists who are like in lockstep with the media, and
which I had no idea about at the time.
At the same exact
as the outsider,
it's like you. How can you not see the opportunity this represents with the right? Like these guys are ready to pull guns, and they're clearly ready for like almost like a secession level, and like even today. If you look at like the polls of the Republican Party, it's like almost 70% of them are like, yes, yeah, independence, secession. That sounds fine to me. And it's like, and you don't want to reach out to these people? It's like
the conservatives are actively talking. Conservatives in 2022 are talking about a parallel economy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like all of the stuff we've always wanted from them. They're like, okay, now they're skeptical of the CIA. They think the FBI needs to be abolished. They think the elections are completely rigged and the federal government is completely illegitimate, and that the CIA helped rig a color election here in the United States. Like, oh my God. Like, talk about your wish list of stuff we want from the Republicans, and they're anti-war now.
Right. But then suddenly there's this narrative in the circle again, and this is I don't think it's unfair for me to say this is part of the LPMC narrative, which is like, yeah, but we don't get, but Republicans are trash because of what the neocons have done, which again just completely misunderstands what you're trying to do in politics.
And now that like neocons like a slur in the Republican Party now, you call your enemy that to like hurt them.
Well, literally, they're the rhinos, and that's but here's the thing, dude. It speaks to something even deeper, because it misunderstands even who the average voter is. The average voter is a reflection. It's a reflective act. It's a reflexive action. It's not something people do with thought that they've come to independently. It's what they do as a result of like identity reinforcement. Let's just to put it in a simple category. The mistake that I think the average person, the average libertarian might do is not realize how much they participate in that, because this is something I've said for a long time. Yeah, I think you could probably hear it in early episodes of my show, but like this is the average person isn't just gonna, the average person is the average person. They're gonna kind of do what they're told. Most people do what they're told. Most people take ideas and they run with them. It's about what idea that you're taking them. And it is really annoying that as we move through 2021 and 2022, that this libertarian narrative has still been like, well, no, we have to go a third way.
And like I had been like in 2020, like I spent like the last 6 months, every weekend of the last 6 months, knocking on doors for like a state election here that was in a 50-50 purple district. And, I spent 6 months like knocking on doors. I talked to over 1,000 people, just normies. And it struck me, how completely unideological these people were. And that the fact that they were willing to vote for people that they had that they did not even have, it didn't cross their mind that they should be consistent in their positions. Mm-hmm. It didn't cross. It's like, let me just evaluate it little by little, and but maybe what do I think of him personally and all that, and how like I could see that, okay, if a libertarian ran, like a real libertarian ran, this would not be a problem for them to get elected by these people. These people would absolutely, vote for like a normal sounding libertarian. Yeah, if you sound like if you sound like a normal person, they'll vote for you, and they're not even going to think about it. And so it struck me that the drive of the LPMC people, that we want people to agree with us and accept our message and be converted. And it just struck me how completely divorced from reality this is. People do not need to agree with us in order to vote for us, give us power, keep us in power, and if we want to do what we want to do, is like they'll be behind us and they're not going to think about it. And so the idea we would spend any time trying to convert them, when these people are not even ideological in the first place. And that was what struck me. Talking to well over 1,000 people in Purple District, Texas, was that these people, in order to even convert them to be libertarian, which is an ideological mindset, I would first have to convert them away to an ideological nature. Because these people they don't even have an ideological nature to begin with, so they can't be susceptible to a libertarian ideology because they don't think ideologically anyway. Right. So it's so not only there's actually an extra step in there with that. These and when I was talk about this to other people, I just get whatever, just completely ignored. And it hit me the cognitive dissonance of this of basically the libertarian movement. Because I have to say at that time, they are the libertarian movement, and there is no other libertarian movement besides the LPMC. Even today, they are the libertarian movement. And
I think it's I would push back on that a little bit, because you still have the Koch network.
Yeah.
Right. And so really, but so which
Paul libertarian movement, yeah.
Right. Certainly I'll grant the Ron Paul, you're 100%, because I was gonna say certainly there what we see is what I talk about is the corporate libertarian. But corporate in the progressive sense of that.
Yeah, it's okay, I get that, but the Ron Paul libertarian movement could not be more out of touch with Ron Paul. And they still say this stupid thing about oh yeah, he got elected because of all the babies he birthed. No, it's a 750,000 person district that's 15 or 16 points red. He may have birthed a few thousand babies. That's it. That's nothing. That's not why he got elected. He got elected because he's a strong right-wing Christian guy in the heart of a 15-point Republican district. That's the whole reason. And this thing never goes for the Democrats, and for the district next door, the Democrats don't even try to run, and that's how red the district is. And of course they would go for a guy like Ron Paul, and because
but here's the problem, right? In a post-2020 world, Ron Paul doesn't get elected to Congress. If Ron Paul was still in Congress, they would be besmirching his name the way they're doing to MTG, to Thomas Massey, to Gates.
Yeah, but with the base now, they don't trust those people, and they understand the establishment, the ruling class is attacking my guy. They must be pretty good. They must be doing something right because they're getting attacked. And they're calling him a racist. Let me look into him more. He sounds great. And it's not that racism is good, but that obviously if they're calling you a racist, it means you're their enemy. It doesn't have anything to do with being racist.
On this precise subject, there's this guy JD Vance, I think, in Indiana, running for Senate. You've seen the advertisement he put out, right? And at the beginning he says something to the extent of, they call you, or if you're, what they'll call you is a racist and a bigot, right? But but we know that we care about, the integrity of our nation, and protecting borders and making sure drugs aren't coming to the U.S. Blah blah blah. Republican heartland talking points. And I saw SE Cup retweet that, saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's saying it." And what I realized was, and it was so fascinating, because I think to you and me, it's both very clear, and to most of the people listening to this. And this is an important point for people to realize when you see, like I tweeted out, like if your favorite commentator, and gosh, I hope some of the ones who don't like me did put this out that might have me blocked, because I feel like it's something they would say, not naming names, but like is something like, I can't believe that Brian Stelter would just say something like that after he got owned by a college freshman. And it's like, no. Like if your political punditry is at that level, you need to upgrade. And you've already upgraded. That's why you're listening to Popular Liberty. That's why I'm sure you're subscribed to BeenAwake.com. Like you're already upgrading that sense making, right? But the point is to say, like, no, Brian Stelter in that clip perfectly parried and minimized, diminished, and like moved on. He's like, first thing he said was, 30 seconds, gotta go to lunch, sorry buddy, right? Like just perfect, like breaks it with laughter. He handled it masterfully. It's not like, I can't believe he said this. And so I think a lot of people didn't catch that, or did catch that element of it. But to the point of SE Cup retweeting it and saying, like, I can't believe he just said this. It's like, what? Like, because in her mind, all she's stuck on is the fact is they'll call you racist and bigot or whatever the line is. And of course the they in this is all about what the media is saying about you, and but what you actually believe. And it's fascinating to watch her in real time retweet it and like validate that entire premise. It like
exactly. It's like, and as ANCAPs, like you should be like all over this. This is such an opportunity that they're just like squandering. And that was and that was when I decided, like it was in like late November or something like that, that I decided, late November of 2020, that I decided that I need to start the GOP Mises Caucus. They're going to completely squandering this, and they're not going to change. Like these people, they're not who I thought they were. They're not nearly as awake as I thought they were.
Yeah.
And if I don't, if nobody, strikes the hammer on this, the iron is hot right now, and we need to be striking the hammer with this. This is we need to start. That was when I decided that I need to start the GOP Mises Caucus, because they're not interested in power. They think they're not. They really believe they're neither right nor left, which seems bonkers to me in light of 2020. And they think that, oh yeah, the left was really terrible, but you know what? 20 years ago, the right was really terrible, and like this is a completely different right.
Yes,
and even after the Ron Paul movement,
well,
like,
and that's my point.
I mean, and you would have thought like the Ron Paul movement, Rand Paul in 2016, is like you would have thought that like, oh, they would have understood. This is a completely different Republican Party than like the George W. Bush. And they were still like, they really act like George Bush is still in charge. And I could not get my head around it. I thought they're squandering this opportunity. I know that I'm 4 years behind them. I know I'm not going to have nearly the fundraising that they are, but God damn it, somebody's got to do it.
Well, you could give people somewhere to go when things inevitably crumble. The other point to make with that too is and that, wait, what were you just saying? Because damn it, I just lost it.
George W. Bush is a different Republican.
Oh yeah,
party.
It's like there wasn't in 2000. There wasn't an American right. There were Republicans.
Yeah.
Right. Like there wasn't there. Like this goes to kind of my narrative and how I've been talking about like the emerging American right. But there wasn't an American right.
There wasn't an American right.
Why would there be? We just beat the Soviets. We were, it was basically. It was, everything was hunky dory. There were the neocons, and there were
the 90s,
right? Yeah, nobody cared about any of this stuff. Your political affiliation.
They might not get that. You and I were raised during the 90s. We know what it was like. This place was a party. Like, I mean, this was Party America, and it's like you could really be forgiven for not understanding.
Here, you want to understand what we're talking about? Go listen to the theme song of Star Trek. Enterprise, the one that like the last one of the last good series that was made in the Star Trek universe, but it took place earliest in the timeline, like well before Shatner, and it is this song of all turn of the century, and there was like this new millennia. There was this idea of hope in the world.
Yeah.
Communism fell. It was, and it's something that disappeared after 2001, and really after 2008, and then again in 2016, and then really in 2020, and here we are in 2022.
It's like if you have to understand where we were as a culture to understand how guys like me and LB got to be the way we are. That because we remember the really good times, like the height of America, like the '90s. What was the best we ever got? It never, and it's been downhill since then. And in order to understand how far we've fallen, and then to like you simply can't if you were born like in 2000 you won't understand where we're coming from, but it's understandable how we did not have a right wing back then. We didn't need one, because everything was so good
because they started going out of bounds in the 90s.
Well, I mean, like the right is needed to apply order to chaos, and there was no chaos to be found anywhere.
Well, here's the thing, right? You and I kept score, I think, as I was just talking to my boss about this today. But like I think we kept score in like early sports, when we were kids. It wasn't there wasn't like championships, everybody still got a trophy, but we were still keeping score. It's like my boss's kid is 8 years old and they're finally keeping score in hockey of all sports. And I think there's like, so because we're pretty sure we're the same age, but there is also, even just within that fall of the end of the millennials into the Zoomers, right? That 90, there are very interesting trajectories and differences. And to your point, that's something that I try to remember. I always say this is how I like to use Twitter. I think I mentioned on our last stream about how like if it was Twitter wouldn't be interesting if there was an IQ test beforehand. The second thing that wouldn't make Twitter interesting is if your real age was next to your profile. You put those two things, which two things you naturally intuit in conversation, right? Your body doesn't say, oh, this person is such and such an IQ, but you can recognize intelligence or like awareness about a subject.
Well,
and the same thing with somebody's age.
I notice that a lot on Twitter. Like I know when I'm talking to someone who's like 21, 22. And it comes across very quickly, very clearly, like, oh, you don't remember the 90s. And it's like when they don't, it's like because it really shows on a person that they remember the 90s. Like you see this with like Matt Erickson, Steve, all of the other Praxians, John, like anyone who Pete, anybody who remembers the 90s, they know it was different back then. And and it's very easy to say there was no real Republican right because you did not need one. And and like basically for most of American history, you don't really have a right. There's no like serious,
you see the paleocons.
You see them, but like they're it's like the function of a right winger is I'm here to shove the culture back to right wing, and I'm here to apply order with force, and I don't really care. And I understand that this is legitimate and moral. And for all of American history, the right has never played that role. Like this is why it's always been since the revolution. It has been one long line directly to the directly towards the left. There are some times where we were moving to the left a little bit slower, and sometimes where we were moving substantially faster. And with like very few exceptions, like maybe in the 80s, like at the early 80s, because Carter was just so awful. And did we get like a real American right? But then they kind of went away because once with the Reagan years, once you solve that, once you've defeated the Soviet Union, you don't really need a right anymore. And they kind of went away for a long time. And then that was how we got the neocons. The right kind of just went away, and because you didn't need them anymore. And now, I think for the first time in American history, we have a real right wing in America that's like, I don't give a shit about principles. I'm here to fucking win and take power, and I'm going to use it against the left, and I do not care.
Well, I think people care about principles. They're just willing to fight for them.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I don't care about the conservative principles are like, oh, I have to be nice, I have to be like Mitt
Yeah,
Romney, and
because you've
yeah,
that
principles.
well,
The
the
libertarian principles
analogy,
are the same
yes.
way.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
analogy I've used is basically what would be the right. This is how I've talked about it. They've basically just assumed that the Constitution is the fence around the American project, right? And and like
yeah,
really like yeah, the left can do some crazy stuff in the universities and they might all be there, but I can still go work on Wall Street, or I can still go work in a major
yeah.
corporation, make my money, go have fun, blah 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 blah. Now, fast forward to 2022, you're stuck in a meeting with 6 other people, 4 of whom are non-binary, and you have to remember 13 different pronouns to, be a little glib, right? And so so that's really what we're also seeing
Oh,
politically.
and
Like,
your son is going to be taught homosexuality in his public school,
yeah,
and
it's not even homosexuality, dude, right? Because it's like your son is going to be taught. Your son is going to be taught, and again, I get a little personal with this because
yeah,
I
same.
was I'm like I like my feminine side. Doesn't
Mhm.
bother me. But as a
Yeah,
kid,
you're integrated.
I was into theater and dance, and like I had, anyway, I just it bothers me because like I feel like I would have been a target for like one of these
Oh, for
public
sure,
school teachers.
for
Um,
sure.
and I was
I,
maybe at different times. The point being is like it's not even the homosexuality bit. It's the whole thing of like, oh, well, just do drag. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, oh, just paint your nails, just put on makeup. It was like I was taught that I could do what I could be and do whatever I wanted to be, but I was still a man.
yeah,
And like and that and
yeah.
like and like but like I could be super feminine. I could do whatever. I could have whatever kind of job I want to do. I could wear tights and do ballet. I never did get
Mhm.
to do I never did ballet, although I did want to do it. But like but like that was never. I could wear the clothes that I wanted and like be expressive in that sort of manner. But I was also, but it was also very clear it was that I was a man, and like and that came with certain things. I was, and of course, and not even that I was a man, that I was going to be a man one day. That's
Yeah,
actually the key, though,
yeah,
isn't it? Is that I
yeah. It
was
is,
going to be a man one day,
and
and
it
I
was just
was
taken
at
as
the
a
time a
given.
brother.
It's like there was no like question of it wasn't even a question. It was just obviously you're going to be a man someday,
Mm-hmm.
and
Because guess what?
you're
If
gonna
you're gay, you're going to be a man someday too.
yeah, and like that it wasn't a question back then, and
Mm-hmm.
today is like now at as a 29-year-old, I look at the way things are today, and it just makes me angry. Like how, and this is what what the thing that really just put me over the edge with the like kind of libertarianism broadly was that I saw just a lack of cultural anger about what's being done by the left, to children, or to or even just broadly what's being done to America by the left, and how like the right is was even back because I remember the war in Iraq push. I remember that really well,
Mm-hmm.
and the I was paying attention politically kind of back then. So like and granted I fell for a hook, line, and sinker because I was like in middle school or something like that. No, I would have been like elementary at that point, but I was still paying attention, and
Yeah.
it was obvious. And yeah, I fell for a hook, line, and sinker. But like I was like, I remember the deception.
Mm-hmm.
I remember very well that like, oh, we really have to go after these guys because this guy Saddam, he's working with Al Qaeda, and they just like flew. I mean that I would have been like fifth or sixth grade when the war in Iraq started, and I remember that my father coming into my room and and telling me, "Hey Andrew, we finally captured Saddam," and I was like, "Oh, thank God, that's so good." And
Yeah.
or like I remember him coming in and telling me, "Hey Andrew, we took Baghdad,"
Yeah.
and it's like, and I knew I could find Iraq on a map and all that. I was a smart kid, but
Mm-hmm.
like and only later on did I remember like having this argument with my grandparents who were like very very far to the left, and them finally explaining like, oh no, they're just lying through their teeth about all of this. And
Mm-hmm.
when I finally got to college was when it really hit me like, oh, they lied about everything. Holy
Yeah.
shit. And this was a complete mistake. And so like I have that internalized on me as a as like a kid and for my family, like I know firsthand, like, yeah, we were completely lied to. It's like, we're not like, the right are not like warmongers. They're like, it's only if if they really feel like they're being threatened, are they going to want to go to war? And the fact we were lied to was just, it was just like monstrous. And you understand like why people really wanted Ron Paul was that, he had been telling the truth the entire time. And we felt so betrayed and lied to, and and there was such anger that the Republican Party still voted for McCain. Like my dad did not want, was like, how could we do this? Yeah, how could we do it? How could we go with McCain? And
see, my dad loved McCain and Romney.
No, I was like, my dad was just like,
and Reagan, but he also loved Romney.
My dad told me, like, Andrew, for the general election, I had to like hold my nose, with this only because it was Obama and I could see that he was a communist. Would I, would I have ever gone for McCain, over anybody? But for that, but it was just so obvious. Like these, like when I hear libertarians, like saying, "Oh, like the right, they're just blood-sucking monsters and warmongers." I'm like, "Fuck you! You have no idea what you're talking about." And it's like I was there, I remember it. Like the, if you think like the average Republican wanted to go to war in Iraq, you're an idiot. No, because
the average person doesn't want anything beyond cheap gas and something to fill their bellies with and hopefully have sex. Here, you ready for this? You ready for this? This is a great tease because we're talking about how things have changed and like really we talked about how we kind of discovered at different points in time in our life and through our intellectual journey just know how much the people in government are lying to us. And you know what happened in 2020? Millions of people had that at the same time in real time. And and those of us who will learn that less, this is the part that ultimately frustrates me, as we've talked about with the broader strategy of with this broader portion of the liberty movement or libertarianism, is instead of embracing that duty and that responsibility of no, look, and which is, by the way, exactly what most of us are doing in our daily lives anyway, right? When people, that's why I started writing again, was because everybody was coming up to me and saying like, hey, you used to write about this stuff. And like, you thought, like, what do you think is going on right now? Right. And so, and I realized I had to do a better job of explaining that, and here we are. But the point is, the point is embracing that leadership, right? Of being like, no, here's that's what I do at beenawake.com is like, no, here are the machinations at work, right? You're going to have the unfortunate superpower of having a memory as it relates to the news cycle. Like that's right. Like you're going to see all the bullshit that they try to pull. And that's what, and instead of embracing that moment, you get flung into this purity spiral, which is like, well, they voted, they thought they cheered on the Iraq war. So they're all bad. And I understand how the anti-war people are burned, but for Christ's sake.
Right there. Well, I mean, right there, that like when I realized this thing is just a purity spiral, I realized that there's different kinds of libertarians. There's people like me that I divide libertarians into like 4 kind of basic groups. One are the weirdos. We can safely dismiss them. They're just freaks, and they're libertarians. They want to be freaks. There's the autists who are equally useless, and they're really just interested in like the purity spiral. There's the grifters, like the corporate guys in Cato and all that, and then there's like the engineers. What I call the engineers. The engineers are the ones who are like, I really want to make a difference. I see how this is working, and I have an empirical view of reality, and I can tell what's what. And these are the overwhelmingly like the Praxian kind of group. Anyone who's anywhere close to post-libertarian is in the engineer category, and the autists are like about as far away from it as you can get. The grifters are just like I don't know if they know the bullshit or not, or I don't know how. I'm not quite sure how they work, but I know that they're just like, I can write them off. I don't even need to engage with them positively. And then there's like the freaks and weirdos who are like a nice foil every now and then to beat them over the head with. because the engineers react so badly to the real
you know what's funny is I think that a lot fewer people are like true grifters than you might actually then than like we kind of use the disparaging label, because I think like there's it's something. So I like, I'm trying to I'll watch like I like superhero stuff, right? And I was just watching there's a bunch of examples of this, but the one I was just watching was like the red sun. So it's like Superman fell in the Soviet Union instead of the USA. Kind of a cool premise. But like it was like, but like, of course, the communist Superman still had to say the press is the enemy of the people. It's like, and like, but it's like, and it's done in such a ham-handed way. And there was a couple more. What was the other one? Oh, then it's like the Americans create superior man, right? Who like does a double fist salute. It's like, and it's just like, but there's this thing I have, whereas I'm watching something, and I eventually turned it off because it was just so awful. Once the whole thing of like, oh, Superman now controls the Soviet Union, so like communism can work. I'm just like, I hate this. But to the point is like, as it relates to writers in TV and stuff, and it's like, never blame on ideological possession what you can blame on laziness. Now it's still it's still like, you're still a lazy writer, but I think there is an element, and this relates to the grifter point, is there's an element of people just saying the things that they think people want to hear. And that is culture by definition.
It's like they're grifters even though they don't intend to be.
And I think grifter is a disparaging term. I mean, like, this was I remember one time I wanted in a philosophy class, I wanted to talk about how subsidizing birth control was recognizing women's inferiority, right? It's kind of like it would like, and my philosophy professor at the time said it would be much. He's like, okay, like, yes, like that's the political thing basically, but here's what we do in philosophy. And I think that's where that's where like categorization is helpful. And if you categorize with less bombastic terms, it can kind of create a better understanding, I think, sometimes.
Yeah. And but like this kind of realization here that that there are different kinds of libertarians, like a solid like 80% are not actually interested in liberty. And of the ones that are, it's like a lot of them are like being like taken down the wrong path by the other people who are really not interested in liberty. Like they are merely treating this thing, this libertarianism, as a secular religion. And they are they speak about libertarianism the same way like Christians speak about evangelizing, for Christ. And it hit me that, oh, this is a secular religion. When I'm dealing with like the LPMC types, for the most part, I'm dealing with people who view libertarianism as their religion, and there's no point and when I tell them,
or we might also even say that as their dogma, which is like kind of interchanging terms, I know, but
and with the LP, it's their church. When I'm trying to tell them come to the GOP, it's like telling that a Baptist they need to come like worship at like the Orthodox. I mean, there's like something so far different from them. You couldn't. I mean, like it's so unfathomably different. And
I will say though, there's
like even like a Catholic is so much closer to like a Baptist than like the Orthodox. And it hit me like, oh, I'm like, it's like I'm asking them to go to another church, and that's why they're having such a visceral reaction to me. This is that I have asked them to like almost like betray Christ is what the way they're taking this, because this thing this hole in their heart, this God-shaped hole in their heart, is being filled by the Libertarian Party. This is their church, and I'm trying to take them to a different church, and and telling them that their church is false, and that,
I think it's more that part.
Yeah, that they're following a false church that was invented in the 1950s and not by Christ himself.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said for the fact that people also don't like to be proven wrong. Nobody wants to think
this is far beyond that.
Yeah,
this is far beyond.
I want to shout out because they've been commenting. Rochelle in the chat, or Rochelle, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but what was it? Yeah, like suggesting LP candidates not be run against good libertarian candidates in the GOP. This is something I talk to a lot of LPMC people about, but as time goes on, you see that especially the national LPMC is going to take a different tact, and certainly the LP culture itself is so anathema to this idea that it's trying to be a it's trying to be a political party, and it can't be. We've all had an easier time radicalizing conservatives and like just the general people on the right. 100%, because those, and why wouldn't you want to radicalize and red pill as many people as possible? And it doesn't matter. I've never been somebody who cares about somebody agreeing with me 100%, because guess what? Like, I'm somebody who can talk for 2 hours ad nauseum about an esoteric subject. Nobody's going to agree with me 100%. And so I like to assume that that's the thing of doing that.
And you see how the conservatives will like cheer for like a Marjorie Taylor Greene. This Rochelle here, she said, I've been having an easy time of radicalizing conservatives in the last 2 years. So much fun. And like I've seen this like anytime I go
look to at Tim Pool.
If I look at like a young, Tim Pool particularly, like him and Malice, or like Glenn Beck with Malice, and like it's so obvious, like the mood the Republican base, the average conservative is in, is like everything I think is wrong, everything I've ever believed has been wrong, and and everyone's been lying to me for a long time. And they're looking for people who've told the truth consistently. And if you've been at all consistent, if you've been telling the truth and seeing these things, like you have such a leg up on the rest of the competition. They will bow down to you, and and like never mind the fact that they weren't ideological to begin with. Like again, you never needed to convert them, because they couldn't possibly be converted. You would have to convert them to ideological thinking before you could even convert them to libertarianism. Yes. And that's just never going to happen.
Yeah, which we're going to get into throughout the essay. There was, and I think this is an important point. It might not come out on Twitter all the time, because there was I'm blanking on his name, but the whole question, I think he goes by like the young Meacock. I think he's in Minnesota. He's been a nice kid, and I've responded to some of the stuff, but I think you brought up a good point of just the age difference that occurs in some of this stuff. But he said, like, is post-libertarianism, which there is no post-libertarianism. There's just a moment, and and you move beyond it, and you kind of figure things out from there. But he said, like, is it just about falling into further obscurity? And what I'd say is, ironically, while you and I might be interested in more obscure ideas, we're not. It's actually not about obscurity. It's about popularity, and I think, again, as I conceptualize this as a wreck in the rear view of my mirror that I'm just going to keep watching until it disappears over the horizon.
That is the what's so interesting is, no, this is not about obscurity, because this post-libertarian bent, this moment, it naturally leads you to the idea, I need to do something to actually impose my ideas on the rest of reality.
I, the good libertarian who can help my community, help my people, which is a return of which is really just an integrated individualism, if you will, right? It's the individual who understand. I'm trying to like speak in language that the audience would understand. It's an integrated individualism that says that I, the individualist, am going to still help my community, right? I'm going to build towards something that can be more over time. So
it's like, and you understand, like, I'm responsible. Like, there is nobody coming to save me, and I'm responsible, and I might go down fighting, but hey, at least I'm going to go down actually fighting.
And ironically, I consider myself somebody, like, I don't like being that edgy. Yeah. You know what I mean? I just follow arguments to their like logical conclusion, which will sometimes put you on the edge of a certain allowable opinion. But like, I don't know. I don't even like, I think if you listen to my show or like the stuff that I cover, I don't cover things from like a really I've worked really hard on like a non-academic, non-esoteric method of like writing, to where it makes you think, but it's still popular. Yeah.
I want to respond to a comment that says, I don't really see this conservative right you're talking about, looking at the reaction to Dave Rubin's baby announcement, Glenn Beck, Prager, a bunch of people congratulate him. Fair enough. That's a very fair way of putting it. what I'm referring to when I say, I see these right wingers is I will look at like the comments section, and one after another are like, what the fuck, what the F is this? What is going on here? And like, even when I see like, Glenn Beck talking to Michael Malice, he's sitting there just agreeing with him, and like, and he has this look on his face, like, and this, and in his speech, he's like, how have I never seen it this way? How, like, and it's like, I can't refute you at all. It's like, everything you're saying has come to pass. Everything you're saying has come true. And and like, he's sitting there looking like, I have to reckon with this. It's like, everything he said has been right on the money. Yeah, and it's like inarguable. And you see this again, like with Tim Pool and Malice, and like, he's got like way more radical. And you see the base of the Republican Party shifting to people like Matt Gaetz, to Marjorie Taylor Greene, Laura Bulbert, Ron DeSantis, like the hardcore people. They don't necessarily agree with them, but they understand that, like, we need people who are actually fighting. And there's a market demand right now for people who will fight. And a guy like Anthony Sabatini in Florida is prepared to take full advantage of this. And
if I could comment, because I haven't commented on the Dave Rubin thing.
Yeah.
I just, because I don't know, I was a little surprised at some of the like the vitriol against it, I guess, but then I understand more the IVF. And I'll say, like, personally, I think adoption is a way better path than like IVF, just period. Even in like my own case, but I also know couples, when they get to that point, even with a straight couple trying to conceive, it's so it's one of those, it's kind of like divorce. I don't like to, as a product of divorce, I don't like to speak about divorces that I don't know about, or get like, I don't like to disparage people for what happens after a divorce, because you don't know what's going on, and there's kids involved, and it's in poor form in my taste. I think there's something to be said for the fact of, if people are going to have a kid, you should say congratulations, and I hope you do the best, because God, you want them to do the best, whether that's like your cousin or something whose boyfriend knocks her up on the third date, even though he's kind of a schlup, or if it's something like this.
Rochelle has asked a really good question right here, that Glenn kept asking Michael, but how does this work? How is this going to work? And she said, we need to be able to answer this question in a way that they can understand. This is why I created the Mises GOP caucus, is that don't explain it to them, show them. And that's why I'm saying there's a market demand out there right now for people, for libertarians who've been consistent, who are truth tellers, to take power and demonstrate that power to the people, because right now they're willing to be shown a different way. And so like, when Glenn is asking, that it's not that he's showing skepticism. Don't take this as him being skeptical. Take this as him being open to the idea that, let's try something completely different. And because that's the mindset I see as the greatest opportunity libertarianism has ever had. And
I think
this is when I say that the iron is hot, let's strike the iron while it's hot. This is this open-mindedness, that they are completely open to a different way of thinking. It's like, I remember that song, that rap song. It's like, hey, the first revolution is when you change your mind, the way you look at things, and you see there might be a different way of looking at things that you had not previously been shown. And I think this is exactly the mindset that the base of the right is in right now. They've had that first revolution in their mind, and they've seen that there is a different way of looking at things that they had not previously been shown. And they're curious enough to give it a try. And that's why I say, if we take power now, this is when we have the opportunity to make that difference and show them that that our ideas work. And you're going to hear an interview coming out with Lions of Liberty in probably sometime next week or the week after, where I actually talk about this specifically. But like, this is the like, when you hear Glenn Beck and when you hear Tim Pool asking this question, how is this going to work? And how do you see doing things like this? This is not them being skeptical. This is them being open-minded. And this is why it's time to really drill this home and get power to show them that that our ideas work.
Well, and I would say it's even like, and this is where, and I'm not, this is, don't consider this a disparagement of Malice, because I love Malice, but this is where Malice isn't interested in answering how it works. You know what I mean? Like he's like kind of like somebody like me. Like he's a writer, he's a writer, podcaster. He's a guy that blabs things out. You know what's more important than how it works is who you're going with and where you're going. And I think frankly, this has always been a critique of ANCAPs that I've had and the anarchists in general, is they're far more concerned with what the destination is and what the journey looks like and the direction we're supposed to be heading. I think that we look at the direction, you look at the trends, and you try to fill in the gaps for people. I.e., again, if I think libertarians have a unique ability to demystify some of the corporate press garbage that we see, right? And it's not pure libertarianism, because really it's the cathedral, right? So like once you so like I think there are people or the Praxians, whoever we are, and we'll kind of as we go through the essay and we talk about what it is, we're all the other things.
Like that's I want to end tonight on what post-libertarian is, because I don't want to do episode 1 without getting there. But the idea behind it is that what we've been doing for the last 60, 70 years does not work. And this is like my number one critique of like the so-called LP strategy, that I can name it. It's one, localism, which is by far the least of it, but 2, national politics and state elections and all that, and and issue coalitions and intra-party politics. These are the 3 elements of the LP strategy. And what's interesting about that is this is exactly what the LP has been doing for 70 years. So it's like, this isn't like a new strategy that they've come up with. This is Michael Heist did not invent this. This is exactly what the LP has been doing for 70 years. Like the LP strategy is the LP's strategy. Like that's the thing that when I say what you've been doing does not work. And the only thing you've done that kind of worked was the Ron Paul Republican primary. That actually worked. And because he was on a big stage, and not a little stage, because no one cares about the LP primary, nobody. And but a lot of people did, particularly at the time, they really cared about the wars, the budget, and the printing press. And so Ron Paul had perfect platforms to speak to all of the major issues of the day in the Republican primary on a big stage, and had the balls to tell the truth about it. And so he got somewhere. He got a lot of people interested in these sorts of ideas. And we have people today who would be excellent on all of the issues of the day, but they're not interested in running on the big stage. Like imagine if you had Dave Smith. Let's assume we went to a national strategy. Let's imagine you had that in 2024, Dave Smith will be running in the Republican primary. What's it going to look like? Well, most Republicans understand what it's like to be on the other side of Trump, because Trump's going to be running and they don't want to be there. So what you're going to have is like 1 or 2 Lincoln Project stooges, Dave Smith and Donald Trump on the stage. What's going to happen is going to be basically like Hillary versus Bernie, where the other 2 neocons, Dave is going to end their careers in one night. And it's going to be brutal, and they're going to be the laughingstock of for the rest of their lives. People are not going to be able to look at them without being like, oh, you really got pantsed by Dave on national television. That's
you got schooled by this college dropout comedian who's on a podcast called Legion of Skanks, which is, by the way, why I think ironically both of us still support a Dave Smith presidential run. Absolutely. Precisely because of the joke. Funny. Right, because of the joke, right?
But can you imagine, like, after those 2 neocons have their careers ended by Dave, it's just going to be Dave splitting 50% of the time with Donald Trump, and him taking pot shots at Donald Trump, and Donald Trump responding to him. Like, can you imagine the shit show of a campaign that's going to be, and how much better Dave is at explaining these ideas? Because now look at the Pied Piper effect that the media is going to have to do. It's like, do we want to promote Dave, who's got this Leash to Skanks record? He's on tape saying the N-word multiple times.
It's gonna be that video is gonna be longer than 2 minutes and 30 seconds, as we all know.
All kinds of every rape joke you can imagine.
I mean, just think of for people who listen to Skanks, just think of what's in the frickin' what's in the actual the closing bumpers.
Oh yeah, it's like, can you imagine this?
Schultz, Dave Smith and Andrew Schultz, man, that would be a great ticket.
Yeah, but it's
Schultz, why? Because Schultz is the promoter.
Well, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be who's going to be their Pied Piper? Do they want to support Donald Trump, who they know can win, or do they want to go with the real radical, who's like Dave Smith, who's like Ron Paul, but instead of being nice and clean, he's as foul mouthed as you can get.
Yeah,
but he's hilarious too, and he's really sharp as a whistle.
And cleaned up his act, has a nice transition arc into more family values, blah blah blah.
That's never gonna happen. That's not believable. He would never do that. He would stay the same exact Dave Smith, and he would just he wouldn't go do events. He would just be, going on shows all the time, because that's how you get the message out, and that's all he's interested. He's not interested in winning. But the media has a choice. Do we want to promote Dave Smith, and his really radical ideas, or do we have to pay attention to Donald Trump again? And we know how that's going to work out. There's their choices, and it's funny because they are both the other's best chance at not getting assassinated. It's having them both right there Trump, with Trump, they know they're not going to be able to run circles around him twice. He's onto them now, and he knows the threat, and so he can beat them. Whereas Dave Smith, if he got elected, it means certain death for the regime. And so it's they would take substantially less certain death over certain death. But at the same exact time, this is just too juicy for them not to take it. You have a Republican saying the N-word all over the place. How are they not going to take that? And they're really going to get the message out there for Dave. And I see the LPMC just it's they don't even want to look at it. And
they've come back to me and they say sore loser laws. It's nobody thinks he's going to win anyway.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. It's exactly. And so he could, and even if he's running in the Republican primary, he could say, they cheated me, so now I'm going to the Libertarian Party, which was the whole plan, but the entire time. It's just a difference of where do you do the primary. It's like you could do the primary, get the biggest, the message out far great, many times greater than Ron Paul ever did, many times greater. And and then still do your original plan as running in the general election on the Libertarian ticket, which, by the way, would just get the media that much bigger. That would get you so much more media attention to do it that way. But they don't want to do it because that's not what it's about. The only thing that this is about for them, it's not about gaining power. It's not about it's just about converting people to their way of thinking. And that and you saw this with Angela McArdle in her debate with Matt Erickson, which he just absolutely skunked her, because she had no plan at all. It was very clear that he was asking her basic questions about, well, how are you going to, what are you going to do? Why are you trying to convert these people? What are you going to do with them once you get them? And no answer. Just we need to have as many as we can before the end. It's why? She couldn't answer that question. And I mean, it was painful to watch. And so when I see I could have answered that immediately. I want people who are going to be foot soldiers to help gain power, because if we had 10,000 libertarians, I asked Dave this question, hey, would you rather have 1 million new libertarians or 10,000 libertarian Mises type mayors? And he was honest and said, yeah, I'd rather have the 10,000 Mises mayors, no question, because this is a completely different America. It's if we had this kind of libertarians in power, this is a completely different America. And that's why I'm going for that. It's I'm full on focused on localism, on gaining local power. Because if we even had that, 2020 never would have happened.
Well, that's the key. And that's what we talked about in the essay is we weren't there. For whatever ideas you might have, nobody was in a position of power. We weren't in the boardrooms. We weren't in the White House. We weren't in the governor's mansion. We weren't in the state houses. We weren't in the lobbying groups. We weren't at the major corporations. What good? This is again the re-questioning of the ideas. And let's end it with what you want to read, the what it is, before we go tonight.
Yeah, could you read that?
Yeah, for sure. So this is what it is. So
what is the
LB Muniz on with Popular Liberty saying defining the post-libertarian moment. Clip it. Here we go. We are not discussing a movement, but a moment. That moment occurs when, in the face of lockdowns, a libertarian sees dogmatic professions of faith and popular democratic political strategies as insufficient methods of stopping government and corporate tyranny. No one can actually be a post-libertarian. Those who are called post-libertarians go by the name Praxian because their concern is not spreading a message, but achieving results. This is to say, without application, there is no point in theorizing what a perfect libertarian world would look like, nor is it useful to use that perfect libertarian world as a baseline for determining right and wrong. There is no encompassing Praxian solution, and the Praxians are not monolithic. The authentic expression of being post-libertarian has been weaponized by those who pretend the world hasn't changed since 2008. Given the power of the post-libertarian moment, Praxians have inserted themselves at the center of libertarian discourse in less than a year. LPMC members, agorists, professional economists, and other high-profile libertarians have all taken turns criticizing the moment without understanding what it is. And in fact, we see this consistently when people talk about post-libertarianism.
And that's that first and second line. I really like what that's about, because it's not about converting people. It's about achieving what the society we want to live in. And a lot of people are like, oh, he's like, Antisandra guy is like a fascist or something like that. He wants to really he just wants to use the government to punish his enemies. Like, no, I want to actually achieve the results of liberty. And I've recognized I cannot do this. You cannot win a war without shooting at the enemy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that has to happen. And their problem, my critics' problems is that they don't see the left as an enemy. They do not see it that way. So when I come around saying that we need to basically return fire, not just initiate fire, just return fire at the enemy. Yeah. They don't see them as the enemy. And so we have a different worldview, because I'm not here to, win hearts and minds. I already serve the Lord Jesus Christ. I already have Christianity in my heart, so I don't need a new religion. I'd love to, save souls for Christ, but that's not my calling. My calling is to engineer a better society, that where Christianity can thrive better, which is a more libertarian society. And I'm here to get results. That's what I'm called for. And when other people are just like, they're not interested in the results of liberty, and the same, not nearly to, if at all, if certainly not to the degree I am. And so that's why I really like this idea that it's not about being a good libertarian. It's about getting good libertarian results. And that is what, that is when that realization is what makes someone a post-libertarian, even if they don't really want to be. But this idea that I would prefer to have libertarian results than more libertarians. Yeah, I would say Dave kind of qualifies right there, where he's I think he's got a little bit of cognitive dissonance, and where he is and who he's being with. But yeah, it seems to me like he gave me that preference that he would prefer the 10,000 libertarian mayors, because he wants the results of liberty too. He's got a kid. He's got 2 kids and a wife. It's like, it's really difficult not to be a post-libertarian when you have that kind of, responsibility on you. And that's another thing I've noticed is that the people who are post-lib in that they want the results. These
Yeah.
are people with stake in the system. These are people who are men who are generally older, and they have families and they have wives and they have kids that they are responsible for. And that's like the driving reason why they're like, yeah, I don't want to collapse society. I don't want leftists taking over. I don't want them, teaching my kids to be trans or whatever. And I want a libertarian society that's safe for my kids and my family. And and that is my biggest demographic. Is men who want results, and they've understood they're not going to get it from the Libertarian Party because everyone who's in the Libertarian Party is definitionally not interested in results. They can't, even if they get power, they lose it, and it becomes unwieldy to them because they don't have the backing of the people, and they lose to the good old boys clubs. It's like it's extremely difficult for libertarians to wield power without the backing of the people, and when you're wearing the enemy's, you have to understand this is a team sport politics, and if you're wearing the other team's jersey, the people who are going to want to work with you are not going to want to work with you. The reason I say Mises GOP is that once you get into power, at that point you pivot to the you go Andrew Jackson style or Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump, and what you do is you get the people behind you and they help you wield your power, because otherwise you get taken down by the good old boys club.
Dude, one of the guys, there's some clips going viral right now of University of Chicago students taking to task high members of the media and their disinformation and democracy. It's honestly, it's beautiful, man, and it makes you feel good because it's like there are some kids out there who are putting up the good fight. But you know what? One of them who works in this, he's a Misesian. It says so in his profile on Twitter. Like, those are the things that are actually powerful, not the Libertarian Party. And that's really what it is at the end of the day, man. Is if we want to, is what this moment of time of lockdowns and tyranny have shown us is that a third party solution is stupid. It's stupid because you don't have the time, and you're better off holding your nose and getting dirty, right? And getting dirty in politics, because politics is a dirty game, than it is playing on the sidelines as a referee nobody wants and nobody's paying for.
Exactly. And so, this post-libertarian moment, you are a post-libertarian if you're like, yeah, I want results. I could care less about, being perfectly principled or, getting more libertarians. Yeah, maybe that all would be nice, but, those are optional. What's not optional is results. We need the results because we all just lived through 2020. We all, and the last 2 years have only gotten worse. Like 2020 was like the reasonable moderate year as of the last three. So and I think that there's a recognition now that, okay, so they've gone away from, destroying the economy with lockdowns. Now they want to try World War III. And so it's like it's like they've moved on from destroying the world economy. Now they want to actually just destroy the world. And you don't want to do anything to seize power, stop these people, and put the brakes on them however you can and draw their attention away from nuclear war with Russia. Yeah, it's like this is this is the time. And the Republicans are there with waiting. They are the base of the Republican Party is like an army without a general. And it's they're just waiting for one general to tell them which way to point their weapons, and they're ready to start shooting.
Look how far they moved with Trump.
Yeah, and no, I'm serious. The reason there was not a real rebellion, like an armed insurrection, at the end of the 2020 election, was that there was no leader willing to tell them shoot there. If there had been one Republican leader willing to say shoot there, this is there would have been an insurrection.
I think we're better off for that having not happened.
Well, but that's the mood that they're in. And so they're willing to start shooting, that's the willingness they have to radical ideas right now. They're open to it, and and this is the time to actually show them our radical ideas work. like our ideas of what a free society should look like, our ideas of how this our government actually works, that this thing is like a mafia pretending it's a human rights organization. This is the time where people will be not only receptive to these sorts of ideas, but are willing to actually try them out and go along with them and instantiate them into power. And if we have people who are not, if we have libertarians who are just not willing to go with that, not willing to take that opportunity, then it's going to pass us by. And not only will it pass us by, but somebody else is going to act on it. And they're probably not going to be nearly as libertarian as we are. And that's why I want to hit, that's why I've started MisesGOP.com, is to take advantage of this post-libertarian moment that not just libertarians are in, but the right more broadly.
Yep.
They're in a moment where, they're in this same kind of moment of, of call it counter-reformation. They've realized that, their principles have not worked, and they need to go back to something that actually does work. And they're on the market and shopping for it.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better.
All right. I think that's the end for today. We will be doing part 2 next Friday.
Yep. Go to beenawake.com. Subscribe with your email. Damn it.
All right. Take care, guys.